friends, welcome to Chitra IT Learnings. Now we are gonna solve a puzzle, prisoner and hats. So the question reads like, there are 100 prisoners standing in a queue facing in one direction. Each prisoner is wearing a hat of color either red or blue. A person can see hats of all the prisoners in front of him in the queue, but he cannot see his hat and hats of prisoners standing behind him. The jailer is going to ask color of each prisoner's hat, starting from the last prisoner in the queue. If a prisoner tells the correct answer, then he will be saved, otherwise, he will be executed. How many prisoners can be saved at most if they are allowed to discuss a strategy before the jailer starts asking colors of their hats? So, at max, how many prisoners can be saved? This is the question. I'm going to reveal the answer. If there are 100 prisoners, 99 people can be saved, plus there is chance, 50% chance of other person, 50% chance of survival of the other person. If there are 1,000 prisoners, then there is 999 prisoners will be saved. So I'm going to prove this with the help of an example. In the example, I took only 10 prisoners. The example I took only 10 prisoners for better explanation. Now I we will I will tell you the strategy that they have created in order to save maximum number of prisoners. So the strategy that they have created is, as you can see, I have noted it here. The last person will shout even if he is able to see even number of blue hats in his front. Okay, and he will simply shout red if he is able to see odd number of blue hats. Okay, we a person at any position cannot see hats behind him or on top of him, but he will be able to listen what the other prisoners have shouted. He will be able to listen. So this is what we will remember. And strategy is not completed yet. Only last person follows this thing, and remaining people will decide based on all the blue hats in the front and all the blue hats in the back. All the blue hats in the back, he will be able to know by remembering how many people have shouted blue. Okay, so this is important. Based on this, the remaining people will take decision, and we will be able to save maximum number of prisoners. Once let us walk through this example of 10 prisoners. If 10 is the given number of prisoners, then we will be able to save at 9 prisoners compulsorily, and there is 50% chance of survival of the last person. Let us see how. The jailer comes to the 10th person and he comes here and he asks, what is the color of the hat that you are wearing? So he will make a count of all the hats, blue hats in front of him. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He is able to see odd number of blue hats. So he will shout red. He will shout red so that it is audible for everyone. It is audible for everyone. But jailer saw that he told the wrong answer because he is wearing a blue hat. He is wearing a blue hat, but he told the answer as red. So since the answer is wrong, he will be executed. 10th prisoner will be executed, but he doesn't mind. He is ready for the sacrifice also because but he is able to save all the prisoners in his front. You you just observe how it is going to happen. Since he shouted red, everybody understood that there are odd number of blue hats. That is just as per strategy. If the last person shouted as red, that means there are odd number of blue hats in the line. So the jailer now comes to the ninth person. Now, what is the color of hat that you are wearing? Ask the jailer to the ninth person. The ninth person will be able to see all the hats in his front. So he will make a count of all the blue hats that he is able to see in the front. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He is able to see odd number of blue hats. He is able to see odd number of blue hats. And if you remember, he I told you that he will be able to listen what his previous prisoner shouted. His previous prisoner shouted as red, and that means that means that previous prisoner is also able to see odd number of blue hats, and ninth prisoner is also able to see odd number of blue hats. So that means obviously he is not wearing blue hat. If he is wearing a blue hat, then one blue hat will be reduced, and he will be, suppose 10 is able to see 5 blue hats, and 9 is able to see 4 blue hats. That means I'm just giving an example. That means 9 himself is wearing one blue hat. 9 himself is wearing one blue hat, but this is not the case here. Even 9 is able to see 5 blue hats in the front. So that means he is obviously not wearing a blue hat. He is obviously not wearing a blue hat. So that means 9 will conformly say that I am not wearing a blue hat, I am wearing a red hat. So 9 told the correct answer and he will be saved, and he is not executed. 9 shouts very loudly. Remember this, 9 shouts very loudly as red. Now 8, the jailer comes to 8 and asks 8, what is the color of hat that you are wearing? And 8 will make a count of all the blue hats in his front. 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 4 blue hats in front of him. So he will make a count of blue hats that he is able to see. He is able to see 4 blue hats in his front. Now the remaining people follows this strategy. I will mention it earlier itself. Decision will be taken based on all the blue hats in the front and all the blue hats in the back. All the and whatever people have shouted in the back, that also will create an impact. So he is able to see 4 blue hats in the front, and he will be able to listen what other people shouted. Plus last person. Last person shouted as red. Last person shouted as red. So he needs to make a decision based on this. Last person shouted as red, and previous person also shouted as red. Second last person. So if last person shouted as red, that means there are odd number of blue hats in the line. There are odd number of blue hats in the line. And now ninth person also shouted as red. That means he is saved, and he he is saved. That means there are still odd number of blue hats in the line. There are still odd number of blue hats in the line, but 8 is able to see only even number of blue hats. There are even number of blue hats. That means obviously he knows that there is a blue hat on his head, because if we come from behind, we clearly know that from beginning itself, since the 10th person shouted as red, there are odd number of blue hats, and ninth person also shouted as red, which means he is not wearing any blue hat. So still there are odd number of blue hats in the line, and but 8 is able to see only even number of blue hats in his front. So obviously he must be wearing a blue hat. So confidently he will be able to say, very confidently he will be saying that I am wearing a blue hat. In that way he will be saved. Hope you understood. If you are not able to understand, please stay with me so that you will be able to get better clarity when we move ahead. So he says the correct answer and he is saved. Now the jailer comes to the seventh person. Now he asks the seventh person. Jailer asks the seventh person, what is the color of hat that you are wearing? So the seventh person will make a count of all the blue hats in his front. 1, 2, 3. He is able to see odd number of blue hats, plus, remember, these people, that means 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All these people will take decision based on this strategy. Decision will be taken on based on all the blue hats in the front and all the blue hats in the back. So 7 is able to see all the people in the front. 7 is not able to see 8, 9, 10, but he is able to hear what 8, 9, 10 shouted. 8 shouted as blue, 9 shouted as red, 10 shouted as red. So 7 does this kind of calculation in his mind. 10 shouted as red, that means he is able to see odd number of blue hats in the line. Odd number of blue hats in the line. Now 9 shouted as red. That means he himself is not wearing a blue hat. So again he is able to see odd number of blue hats in the line. Now 8 shouted as blue. That means, and he is saved. That means he told the correct answer. Now there must be till here. Remember this. Till here there is one odd number. Till 9 there are odd number of blue hats in the line. When blue shouted it as blue, that means 8 shouted as blue. He is correct, and there will be even number of blue hats left in the line. I hope you are getting this. Till 9, there are odd number of blue hats. But when we come to 8, one blue hat is finished now. So there will be even number of blue hats left. There will be even number of blue hats left. So from 1 to 7, 7 understands that from 1 to 7 there will be even number of blue hats. But he is able to see 3 odd number of blue hats. He is able to see odd number of blue hats. So that means that missing blue hat is on top of his head. Hope you understood this. That missing blue hat is on top of his head. So he will be shouting it as blue, and he says the correct answer and he is saved. Now jailer comes to the sixth person and he asks the six, what is the color of hat that you are wearing? Six simply makes a count of all the blue hats in his front. So he will start counting. 1, 2, 3. 6 is able to see 3 blue hats. Plus he may not be able to listen. He may not be able to see 7, 8, 9, 10. But he is able to listen what 7, 8, 9, 10 shouted. 7 shouted as blue. 8 shouted as blue. 9 shouted as red. 10 shouted as red. So he does all this calculation in his mind. 10 shouted as red. That means in the line from 1 to 9, there are odd number of blue hats. 9 shouted as 9 shouted as red. So that means in front of 9, there are still odd number of blue hats. Now one blue hat finished with the 8th. So now there are even number of blue hats. Even number of blue hats. Now 7 shouted as blue, and he is correct. Till now, earlier there were even number of blue hats, and now there should be odd number of blue hats. There should be odd number of blue hats in the line from 1 to 6. This kind of calculation he does in his mind, and he is able to see three blue hats in his front. That means 3 blue hats in his front from 1 to 5. If he is still able to see odd number of blue hats, that means there should be odd number of blue hats in the line from 1 to 6, and he is able to see odd number of blue hats. So obviously he himself is not wearing one blue hat. He realizes that. Obviously he himself is not wearing one blue hat. So he understood that he is wearing a red hat, and he will shout the answer as red. And he is correct. He says correct. Now jailer comes to fifth prisoner. Jailer comes to fifth prisoners and he asks, what is the color of hat that you are wearing? 5 is able to see only 2 blue hats. 2 blue hats. Plus he will be able to listen what all the persons behind 5 shouted, which means 6 shouted red, 7 shouted blue, 8 shouted blue, 9 shouted red, 10 shouted red. 10 shouted red, which means there are odd number of blue hats from 1 to 9. There are odd number of blue hats from 1 to 9. Now 9 shouted as red. That means still there are odd number of blue hats from 1 to 8. Then 7 shouted as blue. In that odd, one blue is finished. Now there are even number of blue hats from 1 to 1 to 7. There are even number of blue hats from 1 to 7. Now, 7's turn is finished. Now, I'll come to 7 shouted as blue. 7 shouted as blue. So, there will be odd number left from 1 to 6. 1 to 6. Because earlier it was even and 7 is having one blue hat. One blue hat is finished. Now, so obviously from 1 to 6 there will be odd number of blue hats. Now 6 shouted as red. So obviously still there are odd number of blue hats from 1 to 5. There are odd number of blue hats. Odd number of blue hats. But 5 is able to see only 2, which is even number, which is only even number. 5 is able to see only 2 hats, which is an even number. How is this possible? So we clearly understood that there should be from 1 to 5 odd number of blue hats. But he is able to see only 2 blue hats in the region from 1 to 4. So obviously that another blue hat is on top of 5, is on top of 5 because there must be odd number of blue hats. So this is how he will identify that missing blue hat. I mean that missing, since there must be odd number of blue hats from 1 to 5 and there are only even number of blue hats from 1 to 4. That missing, another missing blue hat is on top of 5 and he will shout it as blue. Hope you understood this. In this way this continues and everybody, all the prisoners will be, remaining prisoners also will be able to save themselves. So this is how we are able to save 1 to 9 prisoners 100% for sure. And this last 10th prisoner is 50-50 chance of survival. The chances of survival of the last prisoner is 50%. Hope you understood this solution. Thank, thank you for watching this video. Subscribe Chetro IT Learnings for more such content. Thank you.